on the internet, well, they'll talk about thin privilege. Thin privilege is being able to go to a baseball game because thin people can fit in the seats and I'm too fat, I can't fit in the seat. Thin privilege is being able to go what was it, to like to ride to go on an airplane because I'm too fat for airplane seats. I guess it all really comes down to being too fat for certain types of seats. But anyway, what's up, everybody? In this video, I am going to review one by a company named Jubilee, and the title of this video is called "Do All Plus Size People Think the Same?" Now, I'll give you a little preview of what this video actually is basically they take a group of 6 obese people and they put them in a room and they ask them questions, and they are supposed to move to either the left or the right based on whether or not they agree or disagree with the statements. And surprise, surprise, these these questions are, or I guess their answers to the questions are all them basically on the outside saying that they like being fat, essentially, and they're okay with it, but kind of looking around the room at the same time to see what anybody else thinks, because secretly they don't like being fat and they would prefer to express that, but only if everybody else does it, because of the whole nature of the whole health at every size movement. Don't want to get into it too much now. Let's actually jump right into the video.
I am offended by the word fat. 3, 2, 1, go.
The reason I am here is because I feel like in the past, fat has been such a derogatory term, and we've been so ridiculed for the way we look. It's almost like I want to take that word back and make it a positive thing. Like, oh, someone called me fat, so negative, and be like, yes, I am. You know what I mean? Just change the way we think of it.
A lot of words that should offend me don't. And I think it's because I'm just kind of I don't even need the word to know your intention.
Exactly.
So I know your intention, and if you're using it to hurt me, I don't care what word you use. I care that you wanted to hurt me. I just don't look at a word like that as being
You don't want to give it power.
This first one was kind of interesting because they are taking the same approach to the word fat that you see with other derogatory words that attack other conditions or ethnicities, right? The word like faggot or nigger or something like that, right? Black people, they can say that, and what's up, nigga, but if I say it, it's bad. Why? Because they've taken control of the word again. The same thing with gay people. They can call each other faggot, right? But if I say it or if somebody else says it, then it's bad, right? It's all kind of about the intention. Now I'm all for this, right? If fat people, if they want to say to each other, what's up, fatty? Hey, fatty, how you doing? Stuff like that. That's cool. Go for it. But I don't think that why should other people have to participate in this it's okay to be fat kind of thing? Because what's the difference between being for example black or Jewish or gay or whatever? Is that those are not necessarily a choice, right? You can make the argument, you can choose to be gay, whatever. That's a whole discussion for another time. But, there's a lot of people that looks kind of like they were just born that way, right? I don't want to get into it, but that's just what it seems to be, right? But being fat is a choice, really. Okay, fine. Everybody's born with a different set of genetics, a different body type, but anybody can get in shape, and also anybody can get really fat. Anybody can eat a lot of food and get fat, and anybody can get in really good shape. So if you choose to do that to yourself, I just don't really understand why everybody else, has to participate in this idea that this choice of what you're doing to yourself is somehow attractive, right? It's a very visceral reaction of people to have to see somebody who's fat and to just kind of get grossed out by it. Sorry, no offense. I have friends who are fat, blah, blah, blah. But it's not something that I don't know. I feel like it's a little uncomfortable to have to kind of participate in this. Am I wrong? I don't know. Let me know if I'm wrong.
Being plus size is a choice. 3, 2, 1, go.
I lost 60 pounds in 6 months. Everyone was so happy for me. I hated myself. I hated the way I looked. I hated why I exercise and things like that. And so I made the conscious decision of my parents are not gonna be supportive, or maybe they won't like it. My community, the Korean community, is gonna be really disappointed that there's a fat Korean walking around the world. But it was a choice for me to say, well, I don't wanna work out 8 hours a day every day and hate what I look like to be skinnier, so I'm gonna let myself eat more than a quarter cup of white rice today.
So I thought this next one was pretty interesting because you have pretty much everybody except the Korean girl saying that they disagree and the Korean girl agrees. Why does the Korean girl agree? Because she actually successfully lost the weight. And I think that that's really where this whole health at every size movement comes from, which is where you have a lot of overweight people who have tried to lose weight in the past. Like all of these people, they did not start out on day one thinking they're like fat and fabulous. They probably started out like every other fat person. They hated themselves for being fat. They tried to lose the weight. They tried crash dieting. They tried, low carb, zero carb, whatever. They tried all of this stuff. They yo-yoed back and forth. And then eventually they gave up. And in order to rationalize their giving up, they said to themselves, well, I guess it's just okay to be fat. There's all these other people who say that it's okay to be fat. So if I go over there with them, then I won't be a lightning rod for all of this like fat people are ugly sentiment that is like in society. Now, the Korean girl actually successfully lost the weight, so she knows that it's possible. However, she just didn't like the change in how she was treated after losing the weight. So she's, I guess, an anomaly in that sense. I would be willing to bet that most of the people, the fat at every size or healthy at every size people, most of them are what I said earlier, where they tried to lose the weight unsuccessfully, and as a result of unsuccessfully trying to lose the weight so many times, they eventually just gave up.
I disagree because I believe in society, especially in America, we have this idea that, oh yeah, all fat people ate themselves that way, that they just sit at home and they're lazy and they don't do anything and they ate themselves that way. But they don't take into account people who have a disease. They don't take into account people who work out and their body is just built that way. So there are all of these other factors that the average person who's judging people don't take into account, and they just look at someone and they say, oh, you're fat and you're not doing anything about it.
All right, so basically what the black lady is saying is that what did she even say? I don't even really know. Like, she just disagrees. She thinks people are just born really fat. I don't know. It didn't really make much sense. Because look, at the end of the day, let's take a completely biological, let's take a practical or literal approach to this, right? Let's say you have a dog, okay? And you exercise that dog, you run that dog, you run with the dog, and you feed the dog actual, like, real food that the dog would eat if it was in the wild. That dog is going to be lean, that dog is going to be fit, that dog is going to not carry around a lot of extra weight. However, if you keep the dog locked up in your house, in your apartment, and you feed the dog nonstop, and you give it peanut butter, and you give it snacks, and you give it treats, and you just, overfeed the dog, that dog is going to get fat. So that the dog was not born fat. Yeah, okay, you have some breeds, let's say, that are a little bit bigger or have a little bit less muscle than other breeds. But all things being considered, you can take any dog and you can exercise any dog and you can feed any dog to the point where they're lean and they're healthy and they're, within their genetic potential. But again, this is the whole attitude of the healthy at every size people, where they want to be accepted for how they are because they've tried so many times to lose weight and failed. And they don't want to experience the pain of knowing that they've failed again by being reminded that being fat is their choice and that it's unattractive and it's not good. So they've kind of completely flipped and said, no, it's okay. It's not our fault. Not only is it okay, but it's not our fault. And it's actually a good thing.
But I also want to throw out there, like, it is possible that people have eaten themselves to that point, but then you look at, like, why did that happen? Like, there's trauma, there's rough coping mechanisms, there's so many different things that can lead to somebody resorting to that and then eating themselves into this situation. Because I know that's what happened to me. I didn't choose it, but it happened.
Okay, and then this blonde woman, she basically counteracts the entire argument, or I guess adds to it, and says, well, actually, a lot of people do eat themselves into obesity as a result of dealing with trauma or having some sort of being upset, I guess, emotionally in some way. So some people are born like that, but some people aren't. But it's beautiful anyway, and it doesn't actually matter, and we should all be loved for who we are, regardless of our choices. And this is really the main problem with not just, I don't want to get this like political, but like the whole health at every size thing, and all of these like extremely progressive movements, where they say we're not responsible for our choices and our choices aren't bad, and even though they have negative consequences, they're actually not negative consequences and they're actually good, and you should all acknowledge that they're good, because when you don't, you make us feel bad. It's very like these people never want to be wrong, right? They want to be fully vindicated in what they want. They're like little kids, really, that just want to have their way in every single regard.
I've been criticized for my size. 3, 2, 1, go.
Come on, everyone.
People feel that they have the right to come up to you and impose their views onto you about your personal body. The fact that I have rolls on my belly and big thighs doesn't make me any less of a human being. My body is not for you. I didn't ask you. That's it.
So again, the black woman is saying like, I'm fat, I have big thighs, I have rolls, and that's none of your business, and I'm allowed to be whoever I want to be, and you're what did you say? You're not allowed to impose your views upon me. I mean, we kind of are in the United States, at least, and like especially in the United States. Like in the United States, these people have a platform. This is something that could only happen in the United States, right? We love our rights. We love talking about how we have rights. This is kind of the joke about Americans when they go abroad. Is people will say about Americans like, oh, they're always talking about their rights, right? They're always talking about like, I have the right to do this and the right to do that, which is uniquely American. So yeah, okay, I guess you could say that nobody has the right. Well, you kind of do, because you're allowed to express your opinion, similarly to how she's allowed to express her opinion. But like all of this stuff, it comes down to one very simple concept, which is that these people have tried to lose weight, and we'll see this in I think it's the next segment. These people have tried to lose weight. They've been unsuccessful. Their repeated attempts have frustrated them and caused them like intense emotional pain. And now they don't want to try anymore. But instead of facing the fact that they don't actually want to try anymore, they're like, I can't face that because that means I've given up and I'm a bad person. So I have to find some other justification for being the way that I am. And that just happens to be this health at every size thing.
I want to lose weight. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, I thought this one was very interesting because you see they are kind of hesitant to decide whether they agree with it or disagree. And I would argue that it's because they all secretly still want to lose weight, but are ashamed to admit they want to lose weight because they're so strongly pushing this message of you can be fat and healthy. Being fat is okay. Being fat is beautiful. I love being fat. But that the only reason they're saying those things is because I mentioned before, they've tried so many times to lose weight and they've quit so many times trying to lose weight, and they're so resistant to trying again because they associate so much pain with trying to lose weight, because every time they try something new, they're immediately reminded of all their previous failures that they've had before. I don't know about you. I can think of one very specific way that I've got this exact same thing where I don't even want to try something new because I'm aware of every other time that I failed, and it just brings back all of that, let's call it past trauma. Whatever, it is what it is.
The reason like I hesitated so much is because I will love the way I look no matter what. At the same time, like if I like was to keep dancing and keep going to the gym and all this, and then I just like happened to lose weight, like I'd also be like, cool, I'll just love myself no matter what, is pretty much what I'm saying.
Oh, bye. See ya.
I want to be here because this is like the work that I do, and I feel like doing this is gonna like make. I feel like being here, someone's gonna say something to me and be like, oh, like you aren't for body positivity, you aren't for fat activism, you aren't for liberation, but like that has nothing to do with anybody else besides me. I think like if I this and I'm not being honest with myself and saying like, you know what, sometimes I do think about losing weight because I do, and like everyone does.
Because there's privileges when you're smaller. So it's like, it's natural to think, I want to be smaller because there's so many more options for me if I'm smaller.
This is another interesting thing about the fat acceptance movement, whatever, which is this perpetual victim mentality where people are saying we're victims. And you can really find this to some extent with any minority that's been discriminated against in the past, is this whole idea of we are victims right now. And don't go embrace the mainstream culture, remain a victim, come to us, come to the rest of your victim buddies and stay a victim. And any sort of temptation that you experience to leave your victim mentality behind is only because there's privileges associated with not being a victim, with the lack of whatever current state you're in, whether it's being fat or being gay or certain racial minorities. This is how they kind of justify the existence of the movement, right? Which is like this whole idea of thin privilege. Like you read these kind of crazy, it seems crazy, but you read these things on the internet, well, they'll talk about thin privilege. Thin privilege is being able to go to a baseball game because thin people can fit in the seats and I'm too fat, I can't fit in the seat. Thin privilege is being able to go, to go on an airplane because I'm too fat for airplane seats. I guess it all really comes down to being too fat for certain types of seats. But anyway, that's what's going on here. It's on the one hand, it's kind of sinister because like you're manipulating people to keep them in a diseased state. But on the other hand, people who are vulnerable to this message, they're emotionally weak and, they're not, they don't have much hope anyway, right? Again, nothing against these people. I'm sure they're all lovely people. But like if you are voluntarily embracing some sort of less than desirable state of being, because you're too afraid to give up the privileges, the actual privileges associated with being a victim, because those are real privileges. Because you can basically throw up your hands and say, "Oh, sorry, it's not my fault. I'm a victim. I take no responsibility." By the way, eating disorder people, you see this a lot with them. But if you're too weak to give that up, then you're going to perpetually remain a victim forever. And how much can you really achieve as a permanent victim? Not a lot.
I'm like the wrong way. For me, since I am a dancer, it is the most annoying thing. Like I go to auditions and I'm the only like plus size person there. And literally if you go to a concert and see an artist, you will like never see someone that looks like me dancing back up for like Chris Brown. All they care about is, sex sells and, plus size isn't sexy, which it is obviously, but.
So the idea of thin privilege is not really wrong, I guess. Technically it is true. If you are thinner, it's called the halo effect, right? Which is where people who are more attractive get preferential treatment for everything, really. They get shorter jail sentences. They're more likely to be promoted. They're more likely to be viewed as competent for whatever role they are fulfilling in their company, just because they are more attractive and better looking. That's the way it is. And whether or not, how much you weigh or how obese you are or your body fat percentage, I guess, is a very good indicator for how attractive you actually are or aren't. So, I mean, yeah, of course, what's the problem with this is that to call it thin privilege implies that it's unfair. And this is very common in the like health at every size community, where it's this like indignant justification of like, life's not fair to me because I'm fat and it shouldn't be that way and I should get everything I want and never have to feel bad about how I look or who I am because it's not my fault anyway, but even if it was my fault, it's not a bad thing. And it's like these people are all over the place just because they want so desperately to avoid any sort of responsibility for their own choices. It's like At the end of the day, it comes down to economics, right? Supply and demand. If all of a sudden fat people somehow become trendy and everybody wants to see fat people in music videos, then those fat people would be hired for those roles. If all of a sudden, fat people somehow became like the new attractive, then they would receive the halo effect, right? And then we'd be talking about fat privilege. But that's not the case now. And the issue with this is that being fat is something that you can 100% control. You can not eat garbage, right? I promise none of these people got this way from eating actually like healthy food and exercising. That's really what it comes down to. So anybody can change their body weight, as evidenced by the many people who have actually lost weight, many people who have gained weight, all the actors who have gained or lost weight for roles. There's plenty of proof out there. But the problem is that these people, specifically these people, have failed so many times to actually lose weight and change their body in a, a better way, I guess, that they've given up, and they don't like being reminded that they've given up. So they have to choose this other explanation for their behavior that absolves them of any sort of guilt or responsibility.
I had to quit a whole career because of my size. Like, I got my first degree in musical theater performance. I was ready to go to Broadway. And then through college, I gained 65 pounds. And not only did I watch my professors lose interest in me, but I watched casting people lose interest in me. And that's how I ended up in education, because I want to teach that that's not okay. You can play any role, because that's what's baffling to me, is that we're in an age where in theater, we can suspend our disbelief that like animals can talk and things like that, but we can't accept that a plus size person could have somebody fall in love with them unless it's Hairspray.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, fat people are not attractive, really. It's not a good look. You can take anybody who's fat, and if you make them thinner, they'll look better. So, I remember when I was a little kid, I remember watching commercials, and I asked my parents, I was like, why are all the people who are in commercials so good looking? Like, why are they so good looking, all of them? And they told me, they're like, because when people watch commercials, they want to see good looking people. They don't want to see ugly people. And I didn't really understand that as a kid, but, getting older, you understand, because sometimes you'll see an actor in a movie and they'll have crooked teeth. And it'll kind of jump out at you, and you won't really realize until after you see that pretty much every single Hollywood actor has had some sort of like work done. They've had orthodontal work done on their teeth to get them perfectly straight and like super white. But you don't realize that until after you see one that has crooked teeth. So I don't know. Is that really related? Like, why should the rest of the world have to change to accommodate you, instead of you changing to fit into the world, I guess, is what it is. Because, and what, again, this comes back to the main justification, which is that what you are doing to yourself is a choice, right? And that's really at the core of this entire argument as to like thin privilege, fat privilege, healthy at every size, which is that what you are doing is a choice. And their response would be, no, it's not a choice. But even if it was a choice, it's not our fault. And even if it was a choice and it's not our fault, then it's okay, because it's still like kind of healthy anyway. There's no difference, right? So it's like the argument breaks down at several points, but because these people are so intolerant and they're so loud, and it's such a like hotly contested issue, and you have some fairly intelligent people, like these are all, I would assume all these people have college degrees and like are intelligent and sit around and drink wine and talk about politics with their friends, I'm sure. But that doesn't mean they're intelligent about everything. And it's the logic clearly breaks down here. I mean, is it even really logic? It's just justification. It's like, I don't want to feel bad. I should never have to feel bad. Don't remind me that this is my choice, because then that would mean that I made the wrong choice and I'm an idiot.
I love my body. 3, 2, 1, go.
Every morning I'll wake up and I will like get out of bed and I'll look in the mirror and I will literally just like I'll rub like my chest, like rub my stomach, I'll like shake my ass and like touch my thighs, and like I want to like shower myself with love every day. And that's like really important to me, to give myself the time to be like, oh, I appreciate my body for what it does for me. Like, do I want to change? Sometimes, sure. Will it? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But like at the end of the day, like I will love it regardless, because it is like a home for me and my soul.
This whole idea of loving your body is a very weak concept, right? It comes from a point of weakness. And this, again, this is something that in theory sounds like it could be good advice for a very small segment of people. But when you take this advice and you apply it to people who clearly do not deserve to love their body because they are not treating their body well, like the fact that you rub your chest and shake your ass for a minute in the morning, which, I mean, do you really do that? Probably not. But anyway, let's say that you do. Just the fact that you do that every day in the morning, that's not loving your body, right? One could make the argument. One could make the argument that loving your body is exercising, like actual exercising, and supplying your body with foods that will not hinder it in like staying alive as long as possible. Like what these people don't seem to understand is that exercise and eating healthy food, that's not really up for discussion, right? In terms of like being happy and like having a good life. Life is so hard as it is anyway, that if you do not do those things, it's so hard to deal with like the modern world that if you're not eating healthy and exercising, I really don't understand how people stand a chance to like make it in the world. Everything is so hard anyway. And then you want to like add on top of that how bad you physically feel when you don't exercise, how bad you physically feel when you're eating foods that are clearly not healthy, like these people are doing. I mean, why would anybody do that? Forget about being thin, forget about like being attractive, thin privilege, all this stuff. Talk about just only how you actually feel. These people do not feel good. This movement is not born from a good place. It's born like from intense pain and the like desire to avoid additional pain by choosing a solution that I think is inefficient, which is avoiding responsibility, instead of taking it head on and accepting the responsibility and saying to yourself, this is my choice. I know I'm eating garbage. I know I'm not working out. I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to start eating healthy food. That's it, everybody, for this video. I don't know if that was helpful. Somebody asked me to do this. Do all plus size people think the same? What do you think about that? Let me know. Leave me a comment. Also, do you have any other videos that you would like me to do in this totally awesome new style? Let me know. Leave me a comment. Peace.